person who doesn't think they need to. Initiate difficult conversations about racial and gender barriers, and share a bit of your vulnerability in a way that draws others in.
Yeah, because we spend $890 billion on our military to showcase our vulnerability. Anyway, Trump rescinded Biden's trans order and issued his own, effectively barring transgender service personnel from being in the U.S. Military, noting in part that the armed forces have been afflicted with radical gender ideology to appease activists unconcerned with the requirements of military service, like physical and mental health, selflessness, and unit cohesion. And it went on to conclude that expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. Adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's self conflicts with the soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle. And it goes on and on and on. Well, what happened at that point? Well, they went crazy. Keep scrolling, kids. I don't need to read the whole thing. Well, 2 LGBTQ organizations filed suit in federal court to enjoin the Trump order, and the hearing was today. Now, right off the bat, the judge in this case, Ana Cecilia Reyes, revealed her bias, taking extreme umbrage at the use of the words gender ideology in the Trump EO, and argued that the entire order is just basically an attack on trans people's character, saying this is a policy of the President of the United States affecting thousands of people. To call an entire group of people liars who have no integrity, how is that other than showing animus, she said. Well, throughout the hearing today, she sounded more like a lawyer for the plaintiffs than an impartial jurist, saying, if you were in a foxhole, you wouldn't care about their gender ideology, right? She went on to suggest that the DOJ lawyer would be happy with someone that of the plaintiff's commendations, fighting right alongside him. Now, at one point, she literally made the DOJ lawyer sit down in an attempt to prove her point, equating someone's alma mater with gender dysphoria, saying, what if I said no one who graduated from UVA Law School can argue before me? I guess he went to UVA, as I did. Sit down, she said to him. Well, he stood there, and she said, go sit down. Then she brought him back up and said something along the lines of, did you see how unfair that is? Of course, this is ludicrous. The bottom line is the president is the commander-in-chief, and it is well within his Article II rights to make determinations regarding readiness and fitness for service. Now, we know what happened to recruiting numbers since Biden waved transgendered persons into the military. They cratered. And we know the anger in the trans world is real about this and other rules regarding, for instance, the use of restrooms and locker rooms.
If you say that you're afraid of Trump and that's why you don't want the city to be a safe space for trans people, you better prepare for trans people to make this a very unsafe space.
So, who is this Judge Ana Reyes? Well, in short, she's a dedicated left-wing activist. Before law school, Reyes signed up to work for a group called Feminist Majority, which argued unsuccessfully against Prop 209 in California, which banned affirmative action in government hiring. So in other words, she's for discrimination against, let's say, white males if it would benefit a minority. Now, Judge Reyes, like so many activists, is a product of Harvard Law School. And while a partner at the very prestigious firm of Williams & Connolly, she did pro bono work to help asylum seekers and refugee organizations, including she worked for something called the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. She also challenged the first Trump administration's restrictions on refugees entering the U.S. through ports of entry. Now, only Dick Durbin, by the way, showed up in her confirmation hearing. And of course, both of their top priority is not the well-being of American citizens, but the fast-tracking of fraudulent asylum seekers.
Do you have any idea what percentage of those who come to our border seeking asylum or refugee status and go into the process are actually approved to stay in the United States?
A vast majority of the individuals who pass the credible fear interview do go on to become asylees. They do ultimately get asylum through the court process.
Oh, goody, they'll get asylum. Now, every profile of Ms. Reyes points out that she's the first Hispanic woman and openly LGBTQ person to serve as a district court judge in Washington, D.C. Now, could the DOJ have argued for her recusal in this case, given her background or obvious anti-Trump bias? Probably, but it doesn't really matter much because in the end, the Supreme Court's going to have to determine whether being gender dysphoric is a protected status for the purposes of U.S. military service. So buckle up. All right, DOJ once again doing what our elected officials should have done years ago, safeguarding our hard-earned tax dollars and auditing the bureaucrats who spend it. Well, if you were one of the silly few who bought the narrative that the illegals pouring into the country add value to our economy, well, this may change your mind. It turns out in 2023, the Biden administration shelled out $10 billion to set up the welcome wagon for illegals. And in 2024, it was another $4 billion out of HHS. That's just HHS, by the way. But all of that is chicken feed compared to the other surprise the DOJ crew found, a nearly untraceable budget line item payment of $4.7 trillion. What? Wait, but Virginia voters, they have to be very, very happy that their new congressman is upset. Not with the obscene levels of waste, but with how DOJ is actually discovering the waste.
DOJ, I call the Department of Government Inefficiencies, is causing a reign of terror, chaos across the federal government. I have a major concern about them going into Department of Defense and futzing around with the internal systems there and U.S. national security.
Well, that's the twin. That's not the congressman. Oh, wait, they are identical twins. Joining me now, Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt and Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary and Fox News contributor. Senator, let's start with you. First of all, these sums are staggering. Isn't this why these, people are saying these entire agencies in some cases have to be eliminated? And why didn't Congress pick up on this earlier?
Yeah, it confirms the worst fear that real people have in America, that their government has been completely out of touch and spends and wastes a lot of money. And so now you're actually putting meat on the bones. And what they're finding is, crazy. I mean, we taught USAID was sort of the first round here, Guatemalan sex changes, taxpayer dollars for that. But once you start getting into illegal immigration, you start getting into the Social Security payments that are being paid to people who've been dead for 100 years. That's when all of this stuff really comes out, and people are frustrated, and they're happy with the pace of this.
But how does Congress? I mean, I like what DOJ is doing,
Yeah.
but I've asked this to all the congressmen and senators who come on the show. How did you guys miss this?
Well, there's oversight, right? But there's clearly
Not enough oversight.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're not being forthcoming.
It's fine to point out the bureaucrats. They're terrible.
No, agreed. But look, the Pentagon has failed an audit now 5 straight years. So I think.
But Senator, we keep writing the check because everyone wants to go home to their home district. Everyone doesn't want to miss a weekend at home. Not saying you, but in general. And so this is treated kind of like being a member of a board. You leave Thursday and come back Tuesday, and meanwhile, trillions of dollars are out the door.
Yeah, well, my 2 years I voted against these bloated budgets.
Yeah.
But I do think the tools that DOJ is bringing now to discover this and lay it out line item by line item, that has never been the focus of any administration which has the ability to sort of wrap its arms around this. Now it's incumbent upon Congress to make these permanent, get rid of this stuff for good and make sure it never comes
The
back.
only way to get rid of this, Ari, is to starve the beast. But the protesters that are showing up, and they're popping up in different cities, it's all kind of AstroTurf stuff, but they're very dramatic. Check it out.
I am here to protest the president, protest Elon Musk, protest all the executive orders. He is not our president. Everything he's doing is mass destruction. He is a weapon of mass destruction.
Ari, the political effect of all of this, is it working for the Democrats?
This is one of the biggest mistakes they can make. I mean, you talk about a hill they should not die on. The hill of government waste is not the hill for the Democrats to die on. But they want to pretend as if every federal program is meaningful, that every federal program serves its altruistic name and in the cause it's supposed to be dedicated to, instead of being laced with waste, fraud, abuse, and just the constant year after year after year pile on that the bureaucrats do. But Laura, my favorite aspect of all of this is Elon Musk can't do this, Donald Trump can't do it. What is the most famous recent example of somebody from the White House saying, I will not send you, I'm going to cut it off, a federally, congressionally authorized expenditure? Joe Biden. When he said to Zelensky, if you don't fire the prosecutor, I'm pulling back the $1 billion that you're supposed to get. They proved you can do this from the White House, Biden did. And now Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing it over and over and over again for meritorious reasons. Finally, somebody is going through the federal government and taking action. No surprise, it's a private sector guy like Elon Musk. They're the only ones who can do it.
Well, the numbers, again, the FEMA numbers, Senator, again, people like hear these numbers and you get numb to them, but they shouldn't. New York City FEMA NGO money, $81 billion. Billion. I kept thinking that has to be million. No, it's million. Okay, $81 million. Pima County, Arizona, $40 million. It couldn't be billion. Jewish Family Services, San Diego, $22 million. In LA, they got $21 million. Catholic Charities, San Diego, $21 million. That's just FEMA dollars.
Yeah, and a lot of these NGOs were fueling the illegal immigrant crisis that we've had in this country.
They profit off of the illegal immigrant
They're bringing
crisis.
them in, and then of course once they're being paid to bring them in, then once they're here, all of the benefits are paid by taxpayers. Taxpayers have had enough of this stuff. They love that this is coming out. This is what they voted for, and actually it's refreshing that somebody who campaigned on this stuff is actually delivering it. So I think Republicans, we've got to be supportive of this. The Democrats, Ari's right. They're swinging at every pitch here. I can't believe they're stupid enough to keep doing this and defending this government waste. But it's what they're doing. They're the party of permanent Washington, and they're going to lose this fight in court and in public opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Ari, the numbers for the Republicans are pretty good. I mean, right? I mean, 48% favorable, 46% unfavorable. Overall view, Democrats are 44% favorable, 50% unfavorable. So they're underwater on the favorability. Republicans are a little bit above water. I'd like those numbers to be higher even. But nevertheless, there is an all-out info assault on these cuts, right? They're pulling out all the heartstrings, pulling the heartstrings that, moms aren't going to get their baby formula when that's really not the case.
These are very high numbers of recent history. You have to go back to Barack Obama when he was first elected in 2008 to see anybody with these kind of numbers that Donald Trump has now. And it's because finally Republicans are doing something that they've been promising to do for decades but really haven't done. And it's because of Trump, it's because of Musk, and mistakes are going to be made. Let me stipulate, there are going to be some meritorious programs that get the axe, and then they're going to have to get reinstated. But this is the only way to do it. Anybody in the private sector knows when you go and have an across-the-board cut, some good things might go, but this is the only way to get the job done.
All right, Senator and Ari, both of you, thank you so much. Good to see you both tonight. All right, new terrifying footage showing the moment the Delta airline plane crashed and flipped upside down in Toronto. Fox News correspondent Nate Foy has the latest details. Nate.
Laura, good evening. Not a lot of answers from Canadian officials. I had the opportunity to ask the Toronto Pearson fire chief about some comments that he made last night that sparked some confusion. He said there was no crosswind pattern during the crash, despite the fact that there were 38-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and that the runway was dry despite the fact that there was snow on the ground. Here was our exchange earlier.
Can you tell me what it was like out there on the runway as you were doing your job? Was the runway dry and the wind gust? How did it impact you?
I know I provided a little bit of information yesterday for transparency. Today, now we have an active investigation. Therefore, any of those questions would have to be directed toward Transportation Safety Board.
Officials say the plane will stay on the runway for the next 48 hours as the Transportation Safety Board of Canada investigates with help from the FAA. The airport CEO also credited the cabin crew who helped lead the evacuation with the plane upside down.
Everything, drop it. Come on.
Here's how it got like that. The plane comes down right side up. The wing immediately detaches. The plane then slides down the runway with fire under it as the fuselage rotates upside down.
There was no warning from the pilot. There was no physical warning either. I didn't feel like anything was wrong until kind of just the second the wheels touched the ground. Then it all kind of went mayhem from there.
The crash happened after severe weather in the area. Officials said Toronto received more snowfall since last Thursday than they did all of last winter. Monday was supposed to be the day that caught up on delayed and canceled flights, but that didn't work because of the crash. For now, we have reduced operations at Toronto Pearson International Airport with 2 of the 5 major runways shut down for the investigation. Laura?
All right, Nate, thanks so much. And coming up, Trump's wake-up call to Europe. My angle dives in next.
Nice going, Lou. Nothing like a little confidence boost to help ease you back into the dating scene. Of course, that also includes having a smile you feel good about. Fortunately, Aspen Dental specializes in dentures and implants made just for you, with affordable options and flexible ways to pay. And now there's $0 down plus 0 interest if paid in full in 18 months. Helping our patients put their best smile forward. It's one more way Aspen Dental is in your corner.
Not feeling the grays but don't want a color? Try Just for Men Control GX Gray Reducing Shampoo. Just shampoo like you do to gradually reduce grays. Now boosted with keratin. Hair looks 2 times thicker to keep you looking your best. Control GX Shampoo.
I got her a little something.
A little something, Dad?
Hold up. Walt rolled his 401k account into an Empower IRA, and it's grown nicely. I'm for Team Splurge.
Hey, Grandpa!
Get good at money so you can be a little bad. Empower.
1 second, you feel safe. And then?
The police are on their way.
Well, you still do.
From the #1 rated brand in cordless outdoor power, the Ego zero-turn riding mower with E-steer technology drives like a car, turns on a dime, and it cuts up to 2.5 acres on a single charge. Find an Ego retailer near you.
Derriere, caboose, booty, badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
It is amazing to have a collagen. I used to have a probiotic, a green juice that replaced it all with this arm of colostrum. And if you don't know what colostrum is, it is amazing. It is a bioactive whole food. It has all the essential nutrients you need for your skin, your gut, energy, focus, mood, performance, your hair, like immune system. It strengthens, supports all of that. The first thing I noticed was the energy and recovery that it had after workout. If you want to try it, try armor.com.
We finally beat Medicare. Well, he's right, he did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
Joe Biden's legacy for seniors, he raided Medicare, made premiums skyrocket, and drove up drug costs. Worse, the Biden pill penalty is already slashing the development of affordable drugs, forcing seniors to pay the price of Biden's failed policy. Biden broke Medicare, but President Trump can fix it. Call Congress and urge them to end the Biden pill penalty.
President Trump, Elon Musk, Sean Hannity. It's the interview America will be talking about. Don't miss it tonight on Fox News Channel.
This world is cruel, Odessa. When you sang tonight, reminded me of how beautiful things are.
Sultanovich is king.
They're gonna get what's coming to them. Mark my words.
Oh, now!
Ladies and gentlemen, Odessa!
Rated PG-13.
Life happens. Count on Kohl's to get your home reset for less. As a Kohl's Rewards member, you get an extra 15% off home finds like storage to get organized and cozy pillows to snuggle up with. Plus, find decor to style your space and so much more. Now at Kohl's.
You can do anything.
I know. The Oscars.
Hosted by me, Conan O'Brien.
Sunday, March 2nd, live on ABC and Hulu.
Europe's wake-up call, that's the focus of tonight's angle.
I'm looking at people that are being killed, and they're Russian and Ukrainian people, but they're people. Doesn't matter where they're from on the whole planet. And I think I have the power to end this war.
And living up to his promise, President Trump sent his diplomatic team to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to meet with a Russian delegation.
Today is the first step of a long and difficult journey, but an important one. And President Trump is committed to bringing an end to this conflict. He wants it to end in a way that's fair. He wants it to end in a way that's sustainable and enduring, not that leads to another conflict in 2 to 3 years.
Now, ending this bloodshed, the killing, in a war that had reached a stalemate long ago, that certainly sounds reasonable. And we know it's what Americans want, part of the reason they voted for Trump. But from the cheerleaders of endless wars, the response was predictable.
As a series of Trump administration officials essentially trying to bully Ukraine into giving up lots of its natural resources.
Ukrainians are very nervous. They are potentially being set up to be carved up between Presidents Trump and President Putin.
By the way, this is why we need Elbridge Colby in there at the Pentagon to bolster the America First MAGA agenda. I understand there's some people in the Senate who might be giving him a hard time. He's fantastic and totally on board with what Trump wants to do in Ukraine, vis-a-vis China, and all around the world. But everyone's still holding on to this war. They've lost touch with reality. Some, by the way, were literally reduced to tears after Vance delivered his blunt message.
After the speech of Vice President Vance on Friday, we have to fear that our common value base is not that common anymore. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
Only the Europeans would clap for tears. All right, the globalist chorus was horrified that an American vice president actually traveled to Europe and represented American interests.
Lecturing them about democracy at a time when there are so many questions about democratic values being observed and upheld in the United States, it seemed particularly inappropriate.
Totally appropriate. The American people do not have a permanent obligation to protect Europe no matter what. As though Europe's some beloved elderly relative and it's our job to pay for the cost of the nursing home. It's absurd. Now, let's just understand what we're talking about. The European Union has a population of around 450 million people. We're about 350. Its GDP is around 17 trillion euros. Last year, the EU's trade surplus in goods with the U.S. was a staggering $235 billion. And you might not know this, but EU companies own $2.4 trillion worth of assets in this country. And as the UK learned when it tried to leave the EU, the Europeans can play hardball in negotiations when they want to. So the notion that they're unable to defend themselves in a dangerous world or that they're helpless without the support of the United States, it is ridiculous. And there's another point, the one that Vice President Vance made very well. The Europeans, for the most part, do not share our values. Americans overwhelmingly, well, we believe in free speech, not the Europeans.
We were with state police as they raided this apartment in northwest Germany. Inside, 6 armed officers searched a suspect's home, then seized his laptop and cell phone. Those electronics may have been used to commit a crime. The crime, posting a racist cartoon online. At the exact same time across Germany, more than 50 similar raids played out.
Now, Europeans believe that governments should be able to restrain speech. Despicable speech is the type you have to protect if you believe in free speech, but speech that they consider harmful. We're going to dive more into this later on in the show. And Americans, by the way, overwhelmingly believe that voters should have a major say in policymaking, but the Europeans are comfortable with systems that exclude certain parties from the policymaking process, no matter how many votes they get. Americans believe in the right to bear arms, that it's sacrosanct, in fact, not Europeans. And we worry about the economic risks of terrible climate policies. But the Europeans, well, they'll embrace those policies even if it drives them into economic ruin. You know, we have major interests in Asia and are extremely worried, we Americans, about the rise of China. Europeans, they're not worried. They overwhelmingly disapprove of President Trump and his stance vis-a-vis China. But Americans, we're giving him all-time record high approval ratings. Now, none of this means that we should completely ignore Europe or that we're destined to have serious conflicts with the Europeans. No, not at all. Our differences, by the way, are not new. The Europeans haven't liked any Republican, I don't think, since Eisenhower. Remember the wave of no nukes, anti-Reagan protests in Germany in the 80s? I do. But of course, the Europeans gave Barack Obama the Nobel Peace Prize, mainly because he wasn't President George W. Bush. And of course, that's their right. But we won our independence from a European country almost 250 years ago, and we're not going to give it up anytime soon. So here's how this is going to go down. We're going to fix things here at home. As part of that effort, we're going to be cutting expenditures in Europe, and that's okay. We're going to have to cut a lot of federal spending to begin turning things around. And the Europeans will be fine. They've defended themselves for thousands of years, and they haven't forgotten how. And sometimes we'll agree with Europe. Sometimes we won't, and that's okay too. For 30 years, a lot of people in D.C. pretended that there was such a thing as an international world order, that we're all part of it, living in harmony together. But they were wrong. The world is now and always has been a dangerous place where people who want to be free must have the willingness and the ability to defend that freedom. And finally, we have a president now who understands that reality, yay, and who's going to look out for our interests. That makes Europe very nervous. Instead, we used to have a president who just does what everyone else wanted. But Europe will get used to this new world order, and we'll all be better off as a result. And that's the angle.
Trump's almost cartoonishly villainous border czar, Tom Homan, ratcheting up the theatrical cruelty by making schools, hospitals, churches, mosques, and other spaces the target of ICE raids, raiding restaurants and construction sites, and shipping migrants to other countries on military aircraft in shackles and handcuffs.
Well, there is a reason illegals are shackled and handcuffed. In September of 2021, Joe Biden used air deportations to move 15,000 mostly Haitian illegals that were living under the Del Rio, Texas International Bridge. Well, on one of those flights, one of the Haitians realized that they're going back to Haiti and not somewhere else in the U.S. Well, when that was the realization, all hell broke loose on the flight. According to the report in the New York Post, the men ripped every window shade, sunshade shade from their moorings, bent most overhead luggage compartment doors off their hinges. They tore seat cushions off frames, then ripped out their stuffing. They destroyed anything destroyable as pilots cowered at the controls behind the locked cabin doors. That was the beginning of a rampage of attempted hijackings, attacks on ICE agents, and mutiny on the ground back in Texas. Well, then the mob stormed aboard and attempted to hijack the second recently arrived flight, this one carrying women and children from Del Rio. Yeah, this all happened. Somehow we all have amnesia about this. Joining us now, Todd Bensman, a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies. Todd, you wrote this piece for the Post. We also understand there was an attempted hijacking of that plane, as I briefly referenced. What more can you tell us, and why are these liberal do-gooders who are upset about the conditions of these illegals wrong?
A big takeaway is that the Biden administration decided to deport all those Haitians unrestrained. That's mistake number one. After the Haitians rioted on those first planes, they then mutinied on the ground and took over buses that were taking them to Laughlin Airfield. By the way, I was there on the ground for the entire camp crisis, interviewing all of the migrants on the way, and eventually interviewed a pilot who showed me the cell phone photos that he took of his airplane, what was left of it. They kicked the bus drivers out, took control of the bus, and then drove themselves out into the desert and ran away. That happened multiple times, and there were other attempted hijackings on the ground at Laughlin Air Base. So it was the Biden administration that smartened up and did what Tom Homan is doing right now, which is making sure that they've got leg irons on and shackles, not all of them, but some of them. And one other thing I would mention here is that the category of deportees today are criminal aliens by and large. Those are the ones you least want to trust 40,000 feet up.
Well, Todd, I'm wondering why some of our Democrat friends think defending government waste, defending trans in the military, defending trans in girls' locker rooms, and defending illegals, violent criminal illegals, in these types of scenarios is a winning political strategy. For the life of me, I do not understand that.
Right. Well, the advantage that they're after really is they're saying stop the flights, because the flights are incredibly impactful. When those Haitians were shipped off out of that camp, I was on the Mexican side, and thousands fled that camp back into Mexico. And they said that they were fleeing because they did not want to be deported. Everybody knows that deportation flights are absolutely the most profoundly impactful tactic that the U.S. government can deploy to deter illegal immigration. Everybody knows it, and they want to undermine it.
Well, you start seeing people lined up to be sent back home. It's not worth the trip anymore. Todd, this story was invaluable, and thank Ron Mitchell for bringing it to my memory, because I had forgotten about it. Todd, thank you so much. I had Democrats smearing J.D. Vance. That hasn't stopped. Why? Well, he's standing up for you. That's why. Coming up.
Ontario, Canada. Stable and secure when the world around us isn't. You can rely on us for energy to power your growing economy and for critical minerals crucial to new technologies. We're here, right by your side.
Have you ever heard the expression that sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction? I think this is one of those stories. Yosemite National Park, 1,200 square miles of soaring cliffs, cascading falls, and endless groves of sequoias. I came through a tunnel and saw maybe the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. They didn't set out to change America, but that's what ended up happening.
Your pride and joy is measured in acres. Keep them looking their best with versatile Sidekick utility vehicles, professional-grade mowers for a professional cut, and the #1 selling compact tractor in the U.S.
With Dexcom G7, managing your diabetes just got easier. So, what's your glucose number right now? Good thing you don't need a finger stick. How's all that food affect your glucose? Oh, the answer's on your phone. What if you're heading low at night? Wow, it can alert you. And you can even track your goals. Manage your diabetes with confidence with Dexcom G7, the most accurate CGM. Learn more at Dexcom.com.
Joe Fowler here with my favorite cleaning partner, the Duck. A super compact vac with ultra-powerful suction. Now available at Walmart and on Amazon for immediate free delivery. The compact design can reach the tightest places, making it easy to clean up any mess. It's smaller than a water bottle, so store it at any drawer, where it's always at your fingertips. Or in your glove box for the ultimate car vac. Get your horsepower Duck complete with our Pro package at Walmart or on Amazon while supplies last. Order now.
At Pure Talk, free means exactly what this country is meant to be. Free. So when you join us, you'll get a free Samsung Galaxy S24 FE, and it's waterproof up to 5 feet. So when you drop it off the dock, it's safe, if you can find it. Plus unlimited talk, text, and data on the most dependable 5G network for a fraction of the cost of the big three. So join your fellow Americans and call us right now to get your free phone. This is your calling. It's time to answer.
Life insurance is too important to put off another day. That's why SelectQuote makes getting coverage you need easy. Now get up to a $2 million policy with no medical exam and same-day coverage.
Visit SelectQuote.com now. Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
My name is Mike Hammond, founder of Signal Relief. Much of my career has been working in construction. I love outdoors and horses. That active lifestyle is what has caused my body to hurt. I didn't want to let this affect my family or my life, and that's what motivated me to create a team to build the Signal Relief Patch. Patented technology, clinically proven to reduce the impact of pain. The patch is a game changer. No creams, no pills, no wires. The patch is reusable and there's a real money-back guarantee. Whether it's your neck, back, knee, shoulder, or just aches and pains, this patch can give you your life back. When I gave my best friend a patch with tears in his eyes, he said it was the first time in 16 years he did not hurt. Join the hundreds of thousands who found relief. I'm asking you to try the Signal Relief Patch today by going to our website. If you're thinking about buying, it means you need one. You have nothing to lose. I promise the patch works.
Fanapt allopurinol is approved for adults with bipolar 1 disorder with acute mixed or manic episodes. Unlike some drugs for bipolar 1 disorder, nausea, vomiting, and restlessness are not common with Fanapt. Fanapt may be associated with serious side effects. Elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis treated with antipsychotics are at increased risk of stroke or death. Fanapt is not approved for elderly with dementia-related psychosis. Fanapt prolongs the QT interval and may be associated with abnormal heart rhythm or sudden death. In 5% or more of people in clinical trials, heart rate increases, dizziness, hypotension, weight gain, dry mouth, stuffy nose, sleepiness, and increases in liver enzymes have been observed. These are not all the side effects. Talk to your prescriber and learn more at fanapt.com. By Vanda Pharmaceuticals.
When you can't watch, listen. Get the latest news, business, and news headlines on SiriusXM. Anytime, anywhere. Fox News Audio on SiriusXM. America is listening.
Democrats tried the Hitler comparisons during the 2024 campaign, fear-mongering that Trump was like a Nazi dictator because he actually believes in the nation state. And now, because that worked out so well for the liberals, they're trying it again against J.D. Vance.
What's most dangerous about this is what one Republican advisor told me after the speech was that, a lot of us were talking about how it was embarrassing, how it was out of touch, how it was selling out the Ukrainians. But he said to me, Seth, if you listen carefully, it's actually much deeper and darker. He was talking about the enemy within. This is some of the same language that Hitler used to justify the Holocaust.
It could be perhaps the most idiotic framing I have ever heard, and they keep doing it. Joining us now, journalist Matt Taibbi. Matt, again, they're back with the Hitler comparisons. I'm just scratching my head at this point.
It's kind of amazing because the context of Vice President Vance's speech was criticism of a pan-continental censorship law that is really as ambitious as anything that took place under the Nazi regime. He went there to stand up for free speech, for respecting the results of an election in Romania, for free speech rights in every European country. And for that, he gets criticized as a Hitlerian figure. It's a remarkable irony, especially when you consider that afterward we had 60 Minutes showing us these beautiful pictures of police breaking down doors in Germany to arrest people who had been writing memes and things like that.
Well, Matt, is it a failure of our education system? I tweeted over the weekend that this is just another searing indictment of our apparent lack of any real historical understanding of the world, World War II, World War I. But it's, again, I just say it's shocking, the level of ignorance on the left on this.
Well, there's two things going on, Laura. One is that there's been a dramatic shift in attitudes in the United States about whether or not forms of what they call misinformation should be outlawed. It's now over 50%, according to some surveys, which is a dramatic change even from 10 or 15 years ago, when most people on both sides of the aisle believed in the First Amendment and free speech. But also, most people in the United States have no idea about the laws that have been passed in Europe in the last 5 to 10 years, including the Digital Services Act in the EU, the Network Enforcement Act in Germany, the Online Safety Act in England, where you can be jailed for speech offenses. This is going on all over Europe, all around us, and I think most Americans are not aware of the scope of it.
No, they think we have a lot of common values with Europe, but I just did an angle, Matt. It's like, I don't really think we have much in common with Europe. I mean, we have some, we have some interesting, fun traditions that, but not really. Not on the fundamental civil liberties that we all believe in. Not really.
No, and especially on the speech issue. I mean, it was really interesting that John Kerry gave a speech to the WEF last year where he talked about the First Amendment being what he called a major block to the ability to hammer out disinformation. That's because the United States and its First Amendment is a unique concept all around the world. Here in America, speech rights do not flow from the government. They are inherent. The government simply recognizes the fact that we have freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly. In Europe, the idea is very different. Rights flow from the state, and they can be granted or taken away according to how the government feels.
Matt, unbelievable. But this is why I think Trump is saying this foreign aid, endless defense of Europe, given all of this, given the huge trade deficit, it's not going to continue. I mean, they have no one to blame but themselves. Matt, as always, great to see you. Thanks so much. And coming up, we're going to expose the dangerous trans vegan cult. Have you heard about this? Connected to multiple murders. Don't go away.
To remind you that 60% of sales on Amazon come from independent sellers, Tracy from Lily's of Charleston will watch 60 contestants eat 60 hot wings, all covered in Lily's hot sauce.
Ooh, honey, don't touch your face.
To remind you that 60% of sales on Amazon come from independent sellers, Farmer Bob and his Princeton popcorn will be in this ad 60% of the time. Great job, Bob.
At Visiting Angels, we are honored to serve our veterans who have made sacrifices to keep us safe. Caring for those in need is our calling. So if you love helping others, then veterans need you more than you may know. Come join our award-winning team of caregivers and help those in need across America. To learn more, scan the code or visit us online at visitingangels.com.
Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care.
Get your motor running.
B12. Bingo!
Don't worry, girls. I've got WeatherTech.
For whatever comes your way, there's WeatherTech.
Clogged gutters can cause big problems fast. Until now. Call 833 Leaf Filter today for your free gutter inspection.
I've had terrible flooding problems on my porch. Now I understand why.
Right now, Leaf Filter is offering a free inspection on your schedule. Leaf Filter is a permanent gutter solution, so you never have to worry about costly damage from clogged gutters again.
Call us today and schedule your free inspection.
To schedule your free inspection, call 833 Leaf Filter today or visit leaffilter.com.
If you know luxury, it's not just award-winning, it's rewarding. Sattva Mattresses supports all types of sleepers. Luxury is handcrafted and assembled in American factories and brought directly to you with our complimentary in-home delivery and setup service. Which is why over 90% of customers would recommend Sattva to friends and family. Sattva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
1 second, you feel safe. And then?
The police are on their way.
Well, you still do.
When I first heard about Quince, I was a little skeptical, but I was completely blown away. Quince's travel essentials are a staple in my everyday travel. Their pieces are all about comfort, luxury. It's not only high quality, but it's also affordable.
Get $20 off your first purchase at quince.com.
Tonight,
Doge pulled back the curtain and now there's no going back.
Jordan Belfort weighs in on Elon Musk exposing wasteful spending on the next Jesse Waters Primetime.
Listen to me. You can do anything.
It's now or never.
Let's go.
We got a feeling we were getting a glimpse of